Today we sent a bunch of principals and security experts into the 4th grade classrooms here at this elementary school and talked to the kids about how they can be safe and secure online. And now we're here to talk to you about what you as parents should know about how to protect your children, some things that you should be thinking about. So I've got some great people here to speak with you today. Some of them are security experts, and we've got an esteemed government official with us, and I'm just going to have them go down the line and introduce themselves. So
I'm Heather Kellstrom. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology for Saline area schools.
I'm Michael Kaiser. I'm the Executive Director of the National Cybersecurity Alliance.
Greg Schaefer. I am the Acting Deputy Undersecretary for the National Protection and Programs Directorate at the Department of Homeland Security, which is
and they're really good at having really long titles.
I'm Brett McDowell. I'm the Senior Manager of Customer Security Initiatives at PayPal.
And I'm Chris Boyer, and I'm with AT&T.
So thank you, and I would like to invite Greg to say a few words to kick us off.
Sure. So first of all, I want to thank you for letting us talk to you and having talked to your kids for the last 45 minutes or so. This program is, from our perspective, an incredibly important part of the process because these kids are the ones who really are going to make the difference from a cybersecurity perspective. We've gotten to a point in our society where we're enormously reliant on the internet and all of the technology that we connect to it, and we're connecting almost everything to it these days. And these kids are, native citizens to that world that we've created. They don't think of it as being distinct or separate from the real world, if you will. It is the real world to them. We forget that for them, it is the World Book Encyclopedia. And that they're, when you talk about the World Book Encyclopedia, they're not exactly sure what you're talking about. But if you talk about Google, they know exactly what you're talking about. And so they're very comfortable with the technology, and they need to understand what its advantages are, and they need to understand what the opportunities are. But they also need to understand that there are certain risks associated with it that if they're not cognizant of, they can sort of walk themselves into either a dangerous place or an insecure place or a place where they're going to have challenges. And so that's what today was really about. It was talking to them about cybersecurity, how to keep their data safe, how to keep the information that their parents have on the computer safe, how to make sure that they're not infected with a virus or worm on the computer that they use, cyber safety, which is really more about not giving out personal information about themselves or about their parents to people they don't know on the internet, recognizing that it isn't the same as the real world, in that if someone new wants to talk to you, you can look at them across the schoolyard and say, this is either someone I know or not. On the internet, you've got to be more careful about that and really have your parents or a teacher or someone help you ensure that you're talking to someone that is someone you want to be talking to. And then cyber ethics, which really goes to questions about, are you downloading things that really you shouldn't be because they don't belong to you? Are you engaged in behaviors that you'll regret because you're saying mean things about your friends that you'll never be able to take back because once you put it out there in cyberspace, it's very hard to erase. And if that kind of activity is happening to you, how do you deal with it in cyber, and that it's okay to go to parents or teachers or other resources if you're being bullied or treated poorly in an environment that may feel somehow different than being on the playground. And so for 4th graders, this is a moment where they're fully engaged with the technology, but nobody's had that conversation with them. And one of the things we said to them, so I apologize in advance, is go talk to your mom and dad. And so hopefully they'll come home today and they will indeed engage and say, hey, we had this thing at school and here's what we talked about. Because that's the best way, frankly, to ensure that these issues are being addressed and that they've got a good handle on what your expectations are, and that they're not sort of accidentally finding themselves in a place that you don't want them to be. So that's about what today was about. And the kids were great. They are technologically very savvy. Because of the email accounts they get through the school, they all have some regular interaction with the internet, and a lot of them are doing all kinds of things, they told us. So, all of which are the typical things that kids like to do. They're playing games, they're looking things up, they're researching, they're doing fantasy football, they're doing a variety of things. So, others?
Thank you, Greg. So I just want to start by saying that, we often hear concerns about, it's so technical, my kids, they know so much, and I don't know what it is they're doing, and they're so good, they're so savvy about all of this technology. And when I talk to parents and my friends who have kids, and I would say to anyone is, well, that may be, they know how to use the technology, they know how to push all of the buttons. You can give them a piece of technology that they've never seen before, and the next thing you know, they're doing amazing things with it. But I think as adults and teachers, parents, mentors, doesn't look like we probably have any grandparents in here. One of the things that we can provide kids, even if we don't know how to push all of the buttons and spin all the wheels with the technology, is we can help kids make good decisions about what they're doing online. We can look over their shoulder and say, you might want to think about that a little bit more before you proceed forward, or if you really thought this through, do you want to be communicating with that person? So the overarching message that we shared with the kids today is Stop, Think, Connect, and I would like to invite Michael to talk about what Stop, Think, Connect means.
Okay. Stop, Think, Connect. It is what it sounds like. It's a very, very simple message for everyone, not just for kids, but for you as well, about what you do on the internet. You stop and make sure that everything's in place that needs to be in place, such as having all your software up to date, having a current operating system, having a current browser, your web browser. Make sure you have the latest and the greatest, right? That you've taken the preliminary precautions to make sure that what we would say is that you have a clean machine, right? That your machine is actually tuned up and ready to go. You think about what you're going to do. What's the next thing I'm going to do? Am I sharing information? Is that the right information to share? Is that a website that I'm sure is okay? Is this email the right link to click on? Do I really trust who it came from? And then the connect part is go out when you've done 1 and 2, stop and think about it, connect and enjoy the internet, because the real purpose behind all this cybersecurity, it's not just a defensive mode, right? I mean, sure, it sounds defensive, like I'm trying to protect myself, but the concept is if we can build a safe and secure internet, right, which is what people at this table to the left of me spend most of their day doing, building a safe and secure internet, right? The things that we can do on it are even, multiples of what we're doing today. And that's why we're doing this. And we look at Stop, Think, Connect quite simply in the same way that we look at other very, very simple societal, cultural messaging around safety, right? Stop, drop, and roll. Look both ways before you cross the street. Cough into your elbow, right? What is it? For earthquakes, it's something and duck under. I can't remember what it is. I don't live in an earthquake. Oh, I do now, but I didn't used to live in an earthquake country because I live in Washington. And stop.
Duck and cover, sorry.
Yeah, duck cover. Yeah, duck and cover, right? And then stop, think, connect. It's a really simple message, and it's a way to start talking to kids about stop. Are you ready to get on the internet? Think about what you're doing. And then I assume most of them have the technology because you want them to have the technology, and you want them to use it safely. And just think what it'll be like when you start to teach them to drive. So,
So, thank you, Michael. So I would like to ask Chris and Brett. So Brett is with PayPal, and Chris works with AT&T. To have each of you talk a little bit about some of the things that maybe you see where you're working that you think that parents should be concerned about. Some of the top things that kids potentially could put computers at risk by doing. What parents really need to be paying attention to.
Sure. So the biggest thing that's been brought up a few times is keeping everything current, the software current. We're not saying go buy the new fancy hard drive. It's not about the biggest color monitor, the loudest speakers. Those are the things people might talk about. This is the free stuff. Just do the free upgrades. Keep your operating system current. keep your web browser current. That's actually a very important message that I'm spending all of my time in the event tomorrow talking about. Keep your web browser current. If you're running any of the 5 major web browsers, it doesn't matter. They all are supporting the most critical technologies to protect you and your kids online. So you just have to keep it current, because what happens is the software becomes susceptible over time. Some vulnerabilities discovered, and the technology companies that produce that software jump on it very quickly, and they make available a fix. But if you don't take advantage of that fix, then you have a vulnerable situation. So that's the first thing. Just keep things current. And I've seen people do it. It's inconvenient when the little window pops up. Or you want to update this now, or would you like to do this later? Read what it says. Always read these little things that pop up and that are annoying. Take that 6 seconds and read the whole thing, and upgrade your software. I think that's the number one takeaway that anyone can do, regardless of how technically savvy you feel, and it'll go a long way to avoiding the security vulnerabilities that come and go as criminals get more and more organized.
I think that's great advice. I think updating your software is probably the number one thing. I think the other thing that people should do is just kind of do the common sense stuff, right? Like make sure that you run AV software, antivirus software on your computer, and those types of things. So one of the things as an ISP, if you're our customer, if you're an AT&T customer, you can have access to free antivirus software from AT&T. So we actually provide that through our website. We offer things like kernel controls where you can actually block your kids from going to certain sites, or even Microsoft offers Microsoft Live, which will send you a little report about where your kids are going on the internet, so that if you let them have internet access, you can restrict sites, you know where they're going. So take advantage of the tools that are out there. I mean, AT&T, the other ISPs, the cable companies, a lot of the tech companies are offering free tools that are available. So I think I have 3 kids myself, so I actually use a lot of those tools personally. They can probably be improved in certain places, but I think there's some good tools that are out there, and take advantage of them, because they will help you create a more secure environment in your house.
The other thing I would mention is what I really like about the curriculum out of Stop, Think, Connect are 3 of the other words that you have. The safety, security, and ethics focus. So ethics is going to be very personal between you and your kids about how to behave yourself online, what to say about people, and how to report when someone's saying something about you. The security, we kind of talked about, keep things current and know a little bit about your machine, know what operating system you run, so you know whether or not it's actually the current version. But the safety is a big piece. That is not being fooled. It's not a technology issue. And it's the area that people fall into. That's where someone's not hacking you. It's not some complicated attack. It's just someone's trying to trick you into giving away information. That information then can be used to their gain and your loss. So it's just slow down. I like the message of Stop, Think. Slow down, and am I being tricked? Am I really talking to the website that I think I'm talking to? Just take a look around.
Now, I think most of you have children. I know, Michael, that you do, and Greg, you do. Brett, you have children, and I know that Chris does. And Heather, do you have children?
Yes, I do.
So my question for you is, how do you talk to your children about technology, and at what age is it okay to have a cell phone or start using a social network, and how do you how do you deal with that in your own family, and what advice do you give to your friends who have kids?
I'm going to start with that is a decision that has to be made between you and your kids, and you have to assess where your kids are and what you can trust them with and what you can't trust them with. And not every kid is going to be the same. So my 9-year-old daughter is going to be ready for certain things earlier than my 12-year-old son was, because
No explanation.
she's got a 12-year-old brother that right. So there's a variety of things that are going to happen along the way. You also don't have to do this all or nothing. And so my son rides his bike about 1.5 miles to school every day. And so we wanted him to have a cell phone. But that didn't mean we wanted him to have unrestricted access to the internet at 12 on a smartphone, which, Dad has a little, early adopters problem, and so there's a lot of old devices around the house that could be handed off, and we didn't do that. He has a pretty basic cell phone, and he does not have a data plan because, wasn't ready for that. And so you don't have to do it all or nothing. He has what he needs. He doesn't have what he wants, and that's the way life works. And eventually, we'll get to that point where he'll have a data plan. Which, boy, his birthday is Christmas Eve, and that's he's jonesing for it real bad. But I think you have to assess these things. You have to think about them carefully in the context of your child, where they are in their maturity, and what you really want them to have access to.
Yeah, I would concur with that, to a great deal. This is really, a lot of this is developmental, right? It's where your children are and what they can do. And I think, one of the mistakes, actually, I learned some things actually in a good way by accident. That, for example, I gave my kids old cell phones that weren't connected to any network, and they used them as toys, right? Well, that's actually an interesting thing because they have toys of all other things that they get as adults, right? Toy cars, toy things, they should have toy technology, and you watch them as they're playing with them and what they're doing with them, and then you can talk to them as toys, right? Not so they don't have this powerful device in their hand, right? They have a toy, and a toy is, a facsimile. And of course, I gave my daughter my old cell phone, and it still turns on, and it does all these things. It just you can't make calls on it. Well, she found all these things on the cell phone that I didn't even know you could do, right? You're like, did you know that you could play a game? I didn't even know I had games on there. So that was one thing. The other thing is also, I think, really important to teach them the lessons that you want them to do online, not online. And I'll give you an example. So I work in this business, so I'm having conversations with my daughter a lot about personal information and da 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 da. She wasn't using the computer at all at this time. She comes up to me one day, and her grandparents have given her a subscription to National Geographic Kids. She said, "Daddy, there's an art contest in this magazine, but I can't join it because they're asking for my name and my address and my telephone number." It had nothing to do with the web now, right? Because that's life. These are life lessons. And I said to her, because we talk a lot about this, about good decision making. Well, I said, do you trust National Geographic, right? I mean, this is, well, maybe I do. I didn't want to say, no, you can't join it because you can't give you this information, but think about, who you're giving it to. And I think so. Think about the things outside of technology where they can learn. And in terms of the timing of when they get online, I think that is really personal. I think, people just have to decide what's right for them. But I think they also, one thing that I guess I feel as a parent, it's that we have to do as parents, it's the peer pressure that we get from other things. So in our house, there's not a family computer. All the technology belongs to mommy and daddy, right? And if you want to use it, you have to ask mommy or daddy, can I use your computer, right? Pretty, it's like, it's going to be when we get the car too, right? So can I use your car, right? And eventually we'll get them computers and we'll do all that. But, sometimes their friends have, laptops sitting in the basement with no one there. And that's really hard to deal with as a parent. And, they get mad at me about that. But, like you said.
I have all the parental controls turned on the gaming devices.
Right.
And that's another thing to keep in mind is when they're on the Xbox or the Wii or the whatever, PlayStation, they're on the internet. I mean, there is no difference, and as a practical matter, all of the same thinking and mentality applies. So I've got the parental controls turned on those devices, and I get complaints on a moment-by-moment basis, but friend requests come through me, and I decide whether or not they can say yes to those. And if they're a friend, they can. But if it's somebody they don't know, and I don't know who they are, and I don't know how old they are, and I don't know what they're going to be saying, then the answer is no. And that's the way I've decided to manage it. Everybody's got to do it at their own comfort level.
Brett, you want to chime in?
So I have young kids, 5 and 7, but we've already started to work with some of these issues. Parental controls turned on any device that they would use that's connected to the internet. It's worth the effort, especially at that age. You can what we call in the business whitelist the sites they can go to. There's probably like 4 that I actually want them to use. So that's the way the computer's set up. There are 4 websites they can use. But it allows me to start teaching them things like passwords. So one of the biggest lessons that we're focused on at that age is passwords. And that don't just pick a name, don't share them, except with your parents. And understand that it shouldn't be a word out of the dictionary, something someone can't guess. And as they get older, this is a message for the rest of you, not the same password at all your websites. Because there are, if you've paid attention to the headlines, especially in the past year, if one popular site that you use where you have an account and a password, if they do get compromised for whatever reason, now that's a password that might be in the hands of someone who's going to try to do replay attacks at all the other popular websites. And chances are you have an account at one of those other sites too, and they can get your account over there and without ever having hacked that account. It's like a trick. So you don't want to use the same passwords around.
Chris, any words of wisdom, lessons learned with your kids?
I think the same thing. I mean, I think everybody else said. I mean, I have a 10-year-old at home, and I do a lot of the same things. I set up the parental controls. I think that I don't think like my 10-year-old has taken my old iPhone, right, and it doesn't have data plan on it now, but he's hooked up to the Wi-Fi network right at home, so he can actually go, so he can still use it. So even with old devices, there's still ways to get online, right? And I think what I do with that is I do set it up so that he can't download apps that are not that are rated a different way. There's rating services you can use to make those types of decisions. I try not to prevent them from using the technology, but try to set it up in a way that they can use it where I think it's at least reasonably safe. I don't think it's a good idea to tell them not to use it at all, because I feel like that's probably a losing proposition, because they're going to go get it from their friends. You're actually going to incent them to go to their friends, other people to get that. So my motto is to try to work with them to use it and teach them how to use it in a safe way, as opposed to saying just don't do it at all.
I also think it's important to say that the parental controls work up to a point.
Yeah, they're not perfect.
And then once the kids get beyond a certain age, they're going to outsmart you on that. They're going to figure out how to turn it off. They're going to figure out how to get around it. That's just the nature of the beast. They are better at the technology than we are, and they will instantly figure out what the holes in the system are. So the hope is that you use the parental controls until you get them to a point where they understand these concepts, and you've taught them right from wrong in this space, and then they're in a position to hopefully move on as they get older and use the technology in the right way.
I would like to invite Heather now to talk a little bit about what the Saline area schools are doing, maybe some of the issues that you're seeing that you think parents should be aware of, and the resources that the school has available to mitigate these problems, but that are also available to parents.
Well, we start our school year off with technology AUP. All the parents had to sign off on it. Our school system did adopt the Stop, Think, and Connect campaign. We believe we've done a lot of cyber safety training and security and ethics training over the years, but again, it's just so much and it's out there. So this is our first year to adopt it. We adopted it this fall. It actually appeared on the AUP for our students. We give all of our students in grades 4 through 12 Gmail accounts, and then they actually follow them with life. We use filters, we use pornographic and inappropriate language. We have all those pieces, but we try not to focus too much on those because we're really trying to grow good digital citizens. YouTube is open in our district. I mean, we make it look just like it would be at home. We try to give them experiences, teach them, we model with them a lot. So when you talk about being at home with your children, grow their experiences, sit with them, share in their first experiences as they go to Facebook or some of those other places. Have them teach you, you learn from them. Be a part of don't sit in separate places, be a part with them. And that's what we do in the schools. We work really hard to give them nuggets and pieces of information and move them up. Now, do we have some problems? Yes. Like everybody, we have some cyberbullying that goes on, and we bring them in and we sit down and we talk to them and we figure out some plans of improvement. Like every other place, we experience sexting problems, and we have a wonderful community, we have wonderful parents, and it's just a matter of fact, it occurs. We are just getting ready to kick off a big training at the middle school with our students so they understand the ramifications, because the laws, how we might handle it won't be as harsh as how, it's going to be handled from a law enforcement area. So in our school system, we try to bring them along, give them experiences, model with them, and what we like about today and moving forward in schools, we tend to be the ones that they'll help us, they'll take care of that. We like this whole concept of sharing in this cyber safety, security, and ethics. We want to grow. Our job is to bring your students in, give them lifelong learning skills. It's a global society. We have to give them 21st century experiences, and that revolves around technology. And so as we grow them, they're going to have these, but we need resources. We need our help at home. We have our law enforcement agencies in. We have internet experts. We pull people in all the time to help build good digital citizens, to be Googleable. We ask our kids all the time, is your name Googleable? If I get on there, what are we going to find out from you? There was some alarming stat that was given at one presentation before, is that up to almost 50% of students are going to have to change their name at some point because they have posted something that really would not allow them to get a job. Because, where do employers go? They go right online. Where do colleges go for admission? They go right online. So we're here to be the learning environment, and, we give them experiences. Every year we grow those experiences. So to us, fourth grade's a very important starting point. At 13 is another point. That's where we start to get them on social networking sites. We have an educational one called NEAN that we allow them to learn and participate in and share, and that's to prepare them for when they go into Facebook and other areas. So that's what we do. There is a parent packet for you, and there are some resource numbers in here, and we want you to know, as a school, if there is something that is bad that has happened, our first line of defense is we call our law enforcement. We have rules we have to follow. But second sheet the first sheet just tells you about our Stop, Think, and Connect campaign. Inside are the local resources to important people in the schools, our public police departments, our sheriff's office, a coalition. Washtenaw has a cyber coalition that is very active and has many resources. And then we have Washtenaw is also lucky to have an internet facilitator group, and they come out and provide assistance to us. Also in here is a great book that you can start. Your students will be coming home, and probably in the next week we'll be sending a book home. It's from the FTC, and it's fun to read through. It takes you through all the areas of safety, security, sexting. You as parents can decide how fast you move through the book, but they're all conversations that you can have over a length of time. And then there's just a few things. Another one important piece in there is a social media. It's a contract you can set. I have a 13-year-old daughter, so when she was young, we did Barney together on the website, and as we moved up, we shared passwords, we shared an email account, and so we just kept a little book. And this is what the social media is, just get your passwords all on a page together, sit down and do things, and it's kind of, again, conversations you have to have, just like we're having here today.
So
Can I just add something? Two things that. One thing I did with my daughter, which I think actually, just judging from the response of the classroom that I was in, I asked her to write the rules. I said, you write the rules for how you can use the computer. I didn't tell her what they were, and frankly, she came up with every single one that I would have given her. So they know. And I think empowering them to write about the rules of the road for themselves is a really important way to do that. Another thing I'll say is that you have an extraordinary school here, because our research, and we do research about what goes on in cyber education, shows that 90% of the schools are locked down, right? They're doing the opposite of what you're doing. They're locking it down, and they're pretending like what happens in here is different than what happens out there. And so that's a really valuable lesson. And the last piece of data I'll give you is, and I think this is some research we've done, but also others, really similar numbers, only about 53% of parents, and you might have other numbers on this, use parental controls. So
that's why I said people should use them.
yeah, that's why people should use them. So you all are here, you're enlightened, you've come, but maybe you need to talk to your peers about that too, because there could certainly be higher adoption rates there.
Yeah, and I won't say that the parental controls are the perfect, like to your point, they're not the perfect. I mean, there's
Right.
still a lot of industry needs to
There's
do
no
more
parental
with
control that's
right?
perfect,
I mean,
right?
the tools need to be made better. But at the end of the day, there are tools out there. You should at least use them to the extent that you can now, and I think gradually they'll continue to improve. They're awful.
So, we would like to hear from you. What are your questions? We've covered a lot of topics here, but certainly there's a lot more. What questions do you have that you would like to get a little bit more insight or information on?
You can turn on web browsing or not. You can turn. I mean, there's a wide range of controls. Depends on your carrier. Depends on some of the details of what phone you have. But there are pretty granular controls there. On the gaming platform, same thing. You can set a rating level and say, they can only have T for teen if that's the area they are, or G or whatever the rating is, and the other games just won't play. They won't run.
Or friend requests.
Friend requests, you can lock those down. My son has to come to me to get permission on any of those. On the apps on various platforms, he doesn't have a password that's attached to an account that allows you to buy anything. He's got to come to me for the password. So every app, I get a chance to take a look at it and say yay or nay as to whether or not he's going to download that piece of software. So.
Does that software come with the equipment you buy?
Typically.
Like when you buy a gaming system, is it embedded in there somewhere?
Yeah, like on the
And
Xbox.
phones and
My
all
son
that
uses
stuff?
an Xbox 360, and most of those features are built into it. I
So
originally
is it
started.
manual?
Yeah, well, yeah. If you go into the
Yes.
settings
Sit
screens, I mean,
down
there's a
every
there's a family safety center that you can click on in your account. If you go in there and set that up, you can set up all the controls through there. I started using it because I wanted to limit how much time you spend on the video game platform. So you can actually set time limits like an hour a day, or you can set a weekly time limit. So, and you can also, so you can do lots. They'll also send you, like on your computer, you can actually have parental controls that will send you, an email of what websites they go to on their account and that kind of stuff. So you can so if you do let them go on the web, you can kind of track where they're going. I think the flaws with those programs are that you have to set them up on every device. There's not, as far as I know, a ubiquitous parental control setup, so you can't, so like you have to go on your computer and your gaming console and your phone and set them up everywhere. So you have to be diligent, I think, to keep them consistent.
And you have to password protect your own account.
Right.
Yeah,
Because
right.
if you set up this account for them and it's got all the controls and you leave your account uncontrolled, they'll figure that out very fast.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to accept, and that's a good practice anyway, is that you really don't want to have an account that's completely wide open, because you have babysitters that are coming to the house and you've got other folks who are coming in and out of the house, and you don't want them getting on the computer and downloading something that's going to cause you a problem. So
It's not entirely intuitive, but I mean, it takes a little bit of diligence, I think, in going through menus, but it can be done. I mean, I do think tools need to be made a little bit more user-friendly over time, but the ones that are out there now are actually do quite a bit.
Yeah, and just to maybe give you a little slightly different, so they kind of fall into a couple different categories, right? So there's the kind of tools that sort of restrict, right? And then there's tools that monitor. Those are really those are kind of two categories, right? So restrict is like, kind of creates more of the walled garden, and monitor is actually can do all kinds of things, even from down sending you chat reports of what your kids and again, the way you implement these tools are really developmental, right? It's really the ideal thing is to I think as you were saying earlier, is to build the relationship and allow freedom and flexibility as kids demonstrate competency and trust, right? Because at the end of the day, they are going to go onto a wide open internet, whether you like it or not, right?
well, and if you're going to use those monitoring tools, I mean, from my perspective, you also have to have the conversation
Right.
about what their expectation of privacy ought to be.
Right.
And so for us, it's pretty straightforward. You don't have it.
Well, that makes it easy.
Right? Not at 12 and 9. You don't have any. And so if you're on a device, then Dad can log on and look at whatever there is, and every email gets copied to a device that I have access to. So, I mean, there are ways to do this, but you should have that conversation with your spouse or significant other, with your child, so that you're all in sync and understand what the ground rules are. So that people aren't surprised.
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember there's no tool that will ever protect you 100%.
Correct.
Right. So you have to be able to talk to your kids and explain to them. And I think the other issue with a lot of the tools is that it's not a black or white thing. Right? I mean, you can say restrict somebody from going to a website, but you can't restrict, like my son who's 10, he gets school assignments, he's got to go home and research, right? He wants to go on Google to research it. You can't block him from going to Google. because then he's not going to be able to do his research. So it gets tricky in terms of how you implement that, because a lot of the tools, it's kind of they ask you to black or white question, block them from going to this site, but that may not be the right answer. You don't want, to your point earlier, you don't want to block them entirely from YouTube ever, right? Because then,
Right. The goal is not to be reactionary. It really is about a dialogue.
Right.
And that's what we encourage you to go home and do every day. We talk in our district, what's yours is mine is ours. And it really is until they graduate as seniors. After that, we hope all of us together have done them a service and not a disservice in preparing them for their next steps.
I think an important thing that
that's
one
good.
important thing that I found too is that kind of monitoring what other kids are at. Like if your child has a friend over and they're doing something, mine will always ask, "Can we do this on this, or can I show them that?" But you always have to you have to be able to hear that conversation, to hear where they're saying, "Well, let me show you this," or "I saw this," or when they say, "Well, what'd you do down at his house?" "Well, we used the computer." "Well, were you online?" Because you don't know what the other parents are doing, and so you have to begin to teach them how to make the right decisions when they're not where you can hear them.
Yeah, exactly.
there's no
So,
chance that you're going to prevent them from ever being in like an open environment, right? So you're
Yeah,
gonna have
it's
to
all
have some
open, and you
judgment.
have to trust the places they are, but you just don't know as
Yeah.
you get older.
And it kind of builds on her statement there, and actually something that you said also, that you can't be with them 24/7, they're on Google. The big issue I have is that the Wi-Fi is ubiquitous now, it seems to be everywhere. And they're going to friends' houses, they've sometimes got older siblings that are at a different level than what they are at, and they're having access, and you can't, in some ways you can't take back, once they've seen something, it's very difficult to take it back, So I was just curious as to what kind of things do you do with your kids to prevent that? Do you ask, for example, if they're going to go do a play date, do you have a checklist of things that you're going to ask the parent and say, are you protected? Are you using parental? Are you doing all of these things? I don't know. I mean, that's what I was curious about.
I have seen some of my neighbors have approached it where they monitor screen time. And so when their son comes over to our house, usually he's already had his screen time for the week. So there's no gaming, there's no computer, it's just not going to happen as part of the way it's handled in their house. And so that, again, my kids are at a younger age, but I do think it's worth asking about. It depends on your level of tolerance of what you're expecting from the parents that you entrust with your kids. I think basically this is just a new area of judgment. This is a new big topic. We know the other topics that parents have with children that have been around for decades and longer. This is a new big topic like that. It's like drugs and some of the other judgment discussions. And I think online safety is the big topic you'll have to deal with first.
I think that's it. Well, I'm going to say, I think this is really an essential question, and I think you actually are the drivers of this, the answer to this question. There are not social norms yet around some of these things, right? So we have social norms around things about driving and alcohol and voting and all those things. And I'm not saying anything that's legislated has to be right. I'm just saying we have things where it's appropriate. We know at certain ages. We don't, and we have differences. And I'll just give you an example from my own life. I got a friend request from my 11-year-old nephew on Facebook. And I emailed his parents and I said, sorry, I got this friend request from your, you realize, you have to be 13 to use Facebook, right? And they wrote me back and said, too late, cat's out of the bag, his 9-year-old brother already has one, right? So, and I'm not trying to diss my brother-in-law, but, that's what you're up against, right? And that has to be a conversation, not between you and your kids, but between each other, right? What's okay in your community? In our community, it's not okay for kids to have Facebook accounts before it's legal for them to have it, right? And that's something we all agree on, and you're probably going to find people that disagree with that, right? That's part of the parental discussion that has to have. It's not always up and down the generations; it's across the generations that you have to share that. I think that's an important piece of this.
So we're almost out of time here. So I would like to invite our panel here to make One last comment, one last piece of sage advice, words of wisdom, 10 seconds each. So Heather?
Just be our support. We look forward to working with your students every day. Know they're going to have technology experiences. We welcome you into our school and to be a part of it. And I'd be more than glad to come to any group to present and have these continue the dialogue.
Michael?
Well, I met a lot of your children today. I think they're all really smart. They seem to know a lot of this, so I'd say work with them because I think they have a lot of what they need in place. But you know, kids can always learn better judgment.
For a 10-second slot, talk to your kids. I mean, that's really the answer. It's have these conversations with them. You've got a good sense of what you think right and wrong is, and sharing that with them in the context of this new technology is what really needs to happen.
Brett?
It's not discretionary anymore to be competent on issues of online safety as a parent. I think we no longer are of the generation we can say, and that's for them. That's not my thing. I think we all need to be able to lead in that area.
I think it's also not optional, pardon me, it's not optional to not give them access to it, because in the world they're going to live in, like you said, they need to understand it. The earlier we teaching them respect it, the better. So it's not optional.
That's right. Okay, Chris?
Same thing, talk to your kids. You know, we teach them what's right or wrong about a lot of different things. Internet's nothing any different than that. So.
Well, thanks to all of you, and thank you to all of you for coming, and to Heritage School Commissioner Kristen Judge for participating in this. And let's raise good digital citizens.
Here, here.